Baltimore, summer of '97. The air smelled of humidity, of trash piled up on the corners, and of tension in every block. The walls were covered in old graffiti, names of the fallen, crowns, gang messages that repeated themselves like warnings. The sirens never really stopped. They blended with the sound of motorcycles, with the shouts from the courts, with the rumble of bass blasting from old cars. The city was a constant heartbeat, sick and accelerated. That year, a new substance hit the streets. They called it white rain. At first it seemed like just another drug, but its effect was different. It didn't just hook you, it transformed you. It turned teenagers into corner soldiers. Kids of 14, 15 years old who had never carried a piece were suddenly ready to pull the trigger with empty eyes. They didn't need an adult army. Now they had one made of kids willing to do anything for the white powder. And the city was sinking faster than anyone could imagine. The strangest thing wasn't the drug, but who was behind it. In Baltimore, everyone knew the East Side Lords and the Harbor Kings were blood enemies. Decades of losses, paybacks, ambushes. Two worlds separated by streets and docks. Impossible to bring together. But money changes rules, and white rain was too much money. Against all logic, the two gangs formed a secret alliance. A pact nobody dared to break. Overnight, the city woke up with shared corners, divided territories, in peace, and a business growing like a storm. In the middle of that false calm, one night in McElderry Park, fate changed forever. A man, just an ordinary father who had sworn never to get involved with gangs, was cornered in front of his son. Two shots thundered in the darkness, and the body fell onto the wet asphalt. The boy, barely 12 years old, saw it all. The shine of the metal, the shadows laughing, the blood running along the ground. But what marked him most weren't the images, it was the words. He heard a name, clear, in the middle of the laughter. The name of the one moving white rain as if he owned the city. That boy's name was DeShawn Carter, though soon in the neighborhood they would know him as Lil D. And that night turned him into something more than an orphan. It turned him into the bearer of a dangerous truth. A truth that could break the pact between lords and kings. A truth worth more than any shipment. From that moment on, Lil D wasn't just a kid. He was a witness, a risk, a target. And in Baltimore, when everyone wants to silence you, survival becomes the only war left to fight. DeShawn Carter, Lil D, was no longer just any kid. The night his father fell turned him into a ghost with a name. Since then, he walked with his head down, shoulders tense, always with his hoodie up as if he wanted to disappear into the concrete. But in the streets of Baltimore, nothing goes unnoticed. People looked at him strangely. They knew he had seen something. And in the block, a witness was as dangerous as a traitor. The East Side Lords were the first to move. Two guys waited for him outside school, telling him they would take him home. Lil D ran. He learned that day that hunters don't always wear masks. Then came the Harbor Kings. An old truck chased him for 3 blocks until he ducked into a store and got lost in the crowd. The message was clear. Both sides wanted to erase him before he let the truth out. Baltimore breathed distrust. On every corner there were watching eyes, and the pact of silence holding lords and kings together was starting to crack. The younger ones were asking too many questions. Who was the kid that saw everything? Why so much noise over a boy? And in the street, when questions sound louder than bullets, the business starts to shake. Lil D began to sleep wherever he could. In friends' basements, in abandoned bodegas, in houses with doors that didn't lock. He ate what he could find and carried his father's notebook, full of numbers and phrases written in tight handwriting. He couldn't read it all, but he kept it as if it were a shield. On every page there was something that reminded him who he was and what he had lost. That's when Reggie Two-Tone Johnson appeared, an OG who no longer played the war, but who still carried respect on every corner. Two-Tone had lost his son in a shootout at the harbor, and seeing Lil D wandering the streets, he saw a reflection of what he couldn't save. He took him under his wing, not out of compassion, but because he knew a scared kid doesn't last long in Baltimore. Running ain't enough here, kid. Here you either learn how to move, or they'll erase you before sunrise. From that day on, Lil D began learning the real street manual. Two-Tone taught him to listen before talking, to watch the mirrors on cars, to identify who was following him and who ignored him. He taught him that sometimes the best weapon was silence, and that words could cost more than bullets. Meanwhile, the rumors grew. Some said White Rain was being moved directly by a big name, someone not even the lords or the kings wanted to mention. Others claimed that kid, the skinny one in the black hoodie, already knew the truth. And the more the story spread, the bigger Lil D's shadow became. Baltimore was no longer calm. It was a chessboard full of broken pieces, and a 12-year-old kid had become the most valuable piece in the city. The Baltimore port was the heart of it all. Stacked containers, flickering yellow lights, shadows moving between the docks. That's where White Rain arrived, and that's where the pact would break. That night, the East Side Lords and the Harbor Kings had agreed on a meeting to settle who had stolen a shipment. But in reality, everyone knew it was the beginning of the end. In a dark corner, Reggie Two-Tone showed up with Lil D. The plan was to get him out of the city, put him on a bus to Philadelphia before both sides caught him. But Baltimore never lets go that easy. As soon as they set foot on the dock, engines were heard. Old trucks, blacked out windows, dozens of armed men climbing out, lords and kings, together, but suspicious of each other. And in the middle, a silence as heavy as the smoke in the air. Lil D was trembling, but he didn't back down. He had carried too much to stay quiet again. The leaders started shouting, accusing each other of betrayal, pointing fingers over the missing shipment. Hands brushed triggers, nerves on the edge of snapping. And that's when the boy stepped forward. "I know who it was." His voice cut through the air like a gunshot. "I saw him. I heard him. The one who killed my father, the one moving White Rain, isn't here or there. He's using all of you as pawns." The port froze, eyes locked, whispers spread among the soldiers. Lil D dropped the name. A boss who had manipulated lords and kings, who had signed the pact from the shadows and now controlled Baltimore from above, without ever getting his hands dirty. The same man who had laughed the night his father fell. The revelation was pure gunpowder. Some burned with rage, others with fear. The gunfight erupted seconds later. Bursts slicing through the air, sparks lighting up the containers. Men running like rats on a sinking ship. Reggie pushed Lil D into the shadows, dodging bullets, sprinting toward the docks. Baltimore burned that night. When the smoke cleared, no pact remained, no peace left. Lords and kings had broken once again, and the city went back to the same old chaos. Blocks at war, sirens wailing until dawn, mothers crying for sons who would never return. Lil D survived, but he was no longer a child. In the alleys, his name spread like a whisper. The kid who spoke, a witness who carried more than he could. Reggie told him silence would have kept him alive, but the truth turned him into a legend. Baltimore in '97 didn't change. White Rain kept flowing. New alliances rose, others collapsed. But on the walls of the port, someone sprayed with aerosol. Here Lil D spoke, "The truth can't be killed."